Let's get started. Well, listen, what's going to happen today is I am going to finish chapters 32 and 33 today, and then next week it's chapter 34, and then we're done with Deuteronomy. Some of you are like, thank you, Jesus. And some of you are like, let's do it again, which I am thinking about just going and starting all over in one more round. But anyway, but listen, it's been interesting to go through this, the idea of being in Deuteronomy. So let me tell you how we started this, so many months ago. We knew we were going to be moving as a church. We knew we were going to be going to this mobile place, and we didn't know what it was going to look like. So we started this series that is saying, moving forward, looking back, meaning as Israel was basically doing exactly, they were moving forward to the promised land, Moses was making them look back and to say, this is what God wants you to do. This is my word. This is who I am. This is what I'm about. And so we've been watching this whole thing where he reminds them of God, and what he did is he brought them out of Egypt and all the different elements that come with that. And so I just want to encourage you now that as we go through this passage, we're finishing up, but today's story is different. And the reason why it's different is because of how it begins. So have us look at chapter 33, we got to start in chapter 32. Turn your Bibles. Deuteronomy 32, verse 48. Here we go. That very day the Lord spoke to Moses. Go up this mountain of the Abiram, Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, opposite of Jericho, and view the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the people of Israel for a possession. So, ironically, we just got back from Israel, and the idea is that being there gives you this sense of space. You totally get how he could stand on this mountain of Nebo and see the promised land. You get it. You get how you could see. We were there. You could see where Jericho would be. You could see that what goes on the other side of the Jordan and what took place. Moses, because of an act that he did, misses the opportunity to go into the promised land. We'll get to that in a minute. But God goes, you get to look at it. You get to look at this promised land. You've taken these people all the way up to this place. He's been pouring into them the law. He's been pouring into them blessings and curses. He's been pouring into them his very self. And God says, now, I want you to go up this mountain, and I want you to go, and you're going to view the land of Canaan, which I'm giving to your people for a possession. Watch. You're going to go up this mountain and die. You're going to go up this mountain and die. It says, and die on the mountain which you go up, and be gathered to your people, as Aaron your brother died in Mount Hor, and was gathered to his people. Can you imagine? You've been told you're going to go up in this mountain and you're going to die. I'm telling you right now, that is the slowest walk I am ever taking up a mountain. Oh, I forgot my keys. I got to go back. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I would be like, wait a minute. Let me get this right. I go up, I look, I die. Woo! Right? And that, we don't know if he gets 5 minutes. We don't know if he gets 5 hours. We just know that he gets to go on the top of this mountain and he gets to die. I would not want to know that news. I would rather have gotten to the top of the mountain and he goes, okay, now you're going to die. Then it'd be like, okay, well, it's like that. But can you imagine walking up this thing going, I'm going to die when I get up here? Now watch what happens. Because you broke faith with me in the midst of the people of Israel at the waters of Meribah Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin, and because you did not treat me as holy in the midst of the people Israel. Moses, you disrespected me in front of my kids. You did not act in faith. You broke faith with me. You were told to speak to the rock. You struck the rock, and in doing so, lost. And you're sitting there going, my gosh, that is so harsh. And yet, the concept is God goes, but I brought you here. I cannot have a leader that is going to do that to me and take my people into the promised land. And as we saw 2 weeks ago, Tim took us through the process that now Joshua is going to take him to the promised land. But you have in Moses this one that goes, oh my word, I was so close. I was there. It's right, it's so close, right? Have you ever been so close? I mean, it's just close. And God goes, no, you don't get to go in. You can look at it. Like, wow, okay, awesome, right? I'd have been looking like, no, I'm not done, bam, it falls over. For you shall see the land before you, and you shall not go there in the land that I'm giving to the people of Israel. That's how we get into chapter 33. Moses is on his way to the mountain to die. But I do kind of believe he's kind of like, well, I got one more thing to say. Well, of course you do. Of course you have a few things to say. Of course you're going to do a couple of things. Of course you're going to take your time. So this is what he does. This is going to be very reminiscent for you of what happened with Jacob before Jacob died. Jacob brought his sons in by clan, by name, and blessed them. And he blessed Dan and Gad and Issachar. And he blessed, by the way, Ephraim and Manasseh. But his blessings were also prophetic. And it's not to say that what Moses is going to say is not prophetic, but they're much more blessings. Meaning, this is what I want for you. This is what I'm hoping for you. This is what I would desire for you. And I want to take us back, and I know I said this 3 weeks going, if not 4. Can you imagine just wanting so desperately to share with these people and say to them, listen, when you go into this land, this is what I want you to know. I don't know of a parent that I have met that did not have in their mind some idea of what they wanted for their children. Maybe it was a flashing thought, or maybe they really thought it through, but they're saying, I want my kid to do this or to be this way. Or there's no parent that at some point does not do that. I've done that for my boys. I want for them, and I can picture what I want for them, and I want so many things I want them to avoid, and so many things I don't want them to experience, and so many things I want them to not have access to. As a father, that's what I want. But I'm also very aware that as a father, that my sons have free will, and as much as I plead, and as much as I warn, and as much as I beg, there is a world out there that is going to entice them and drag them down. It is. They have to understand something. My dad used to tell me, and he was not kidding, Jeff, I made my own toys. No one ever took me to a store to buy a toy. I made my own toys. Now, when I got my boys, I wanted to have stories that dramatic. So I'd be like, Ethan, I only had air conditioning half the year. In the summertime, but in the wintertime, no air conditioning. Ethan, I sat in the back of the car with no seatbelt. It was craziness. Actually liked it, but yeah, it was craziness. And there is no way I can compare my dad's story to, there's no way. My parents blessed my sister and I. And the fact is that there is no way, in the way I understand my dad making his own toys, that Ethan understands me and what I went through. Does that make sense? He's having a new experience and a new time with new things and new ways that things are happening. But nonetheless, what my father wanted for me and what I want for my sons is the same. We want them to be good, character, heart, do the right thing. Do we not? And so Moses, in these blessings, is saying to them, listen, you're going into this land, but I want to bless you. But by the way, I think in his heart of hearts, he knew that once they got to the other side, they were going to do their own thing. All of you that went off to college, right, are hoping that your parents never find out some of the things you ever did. Those of you, once you got out of the view of your parents, are hoping they never find out all the things that you did. There are things I'm still admitting now to my mother. I feel safe now, like she can't ground me, right? I'm just now telling her things that I did. And yet, in this process, Moses puts out a blessing. So look at Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 1. This is the blessing which Moses, the man of God, blessed the people of Israel before his death. He said, the Lord came from Sinai and dawned from Seir upon us. He shone forth from Mount Paran. He came from 10,000 of holy ones with flaming fire at his right hand. He's trying to express the glory of God, who, by the way, chose to put his presence amongst them. That's what he's trying to do. This glorious God on these mountains who we have experienced, where he has shaken the earth with his voice. He is the one who literally has fire at his right hand, still chose to be with us. Yes, he loved his people. All his holy ones were in his hand. So they followed in your steps, receiving direction from you. When Moses commanded us a law as a possession for the assembly of Jacob, thus the Lord became king in Jeshurun. Jeshurun is an interesting word. I told you last week that it means ox, because the idea of you had an ox is this thing that actually gave you such a blessing. An ox could plow the field, an ox could move your stuff, an ox is coming. And so Jeshurun is actually God's pet name for Israel. Do you have a pet name for your kids? Do you have a pet name you would call them that only you call them? And if you call them out in front of their friends, they get really embarrassed. My boys have 3 nicknames. There's Ethan, who is called E. There's Ben, who's called Beans. And there is Zach, who is called Zach. The reason why is Zach doesn't need a pet. That is Zach, and that pretty much says everything you need to know about Zach. Does that make sense? Why add to it? There's too much already there. But what I'm saying is that in this process, God has a pet name for Israel. When the heads of the people were gathered, all the tribes of Israel together, he said this, let Reuben live and not die, but let his men be few. Reuben, by the way, was cursed. Reuben's choices as the firstborn and the things that he did cursed him from the beginning. And yet here is a blessing. It sounds like it's negative, but it actually is a blessing. Let Reuben live. By the choices Reuben would made as a clan, they should have been killed off and not die. But let his men be few. Meaning, listen, you're going to live, but don't ever, because here's the problem. Whenever Reuben got big, they got into trouble. Does that make sense? I want him to stay, but I never want him to have that power again. On this map, I'm going to show you where the 12 tribes were given land. Right here is where Reuben was given land. By the way, east of the Jordan, he didn't even get to live in the promised land. It's a little land south of what is now Jordan. Reuben, the firstborn, doesn't even get the promised land. He gets east of the Jordan in this little bottom spot. And this he said of Judah, hear, O Lord, the voice of Judah, and bring him into his people. With your hands attend for him, and be a help against his adversaries. One thing you need to know about Judah. Judah, obviously, there's a line that Jesus comes from. Judah is this place. It's where we get the idea of Judah, Judea, where we get Judaism, Jews. Judah becomes this line. And Judah, you need to understand something about them. The idea is that when the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom were destroyed, the Assyrians came all the way up to Judah. And read that last verse. And be a help against his adversaries. And yet Judah pushes them back. It wasn't until the Babylonians came and ultimately took over Judah. But notice the blessing that Moses gives. He says to them, God, listen, bring him into his people. That phrase is that, honestly, Jesus would come through Judah. On our map, here is Judah. And what you have is this very large section. Jerusalem is in Judah. Bethlehem is in Judah. This very significant area in the place of Israel. And yet that is where God is saying, listen, protect him from his adversaries. And of Levi, he said, give to Levi your Thummim and your Urim. Now, you guys all know what a Thummim and Urim is. I don't have to tell you, right? You're good? All right. The Levi priests, that's what they were called. Levi's never given any land. Levi lives amongst his brothers. The high priest had a breastplate with these rocks on them called the Thummim and the Urim. You know what they were used for? To cast lots, to have God help make decisions. And so when it says, and of Levi, give to Levi your Thummim and your Ermine, to your godly one, whom you tested at Massah, and whom you have quarreled at the waters of Meribah, who said of his father and mother, I regard them not. Why does Levi say I regard them not? Because when they worshiped the golden calf, it was the tribe of Levi that, by the way, went and killed those who had danced around the golden calf, and they even killed their own fathers and mothers. I regard them not. He disowned his brothers and ignored his children, for they observed your word and kept your covenant. Levi held up the word and said, not on our watch. They shall teach Jacob your rules and Israel your law. They shall put incense before you and whole burnt offerings on your altar. Bless, O Lord, his substance, and accept the work of his hands. Crush the loins of his adversaries, of those who hate him, that they rise not again. Now, what you noticed here is that I don't have a land for the Levites to show you because they lived amongst your brother, but there's something missing. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. We've heard of Reuben, Judah, Levi. Well, what happened to Simeon? Simeon, because of their choices, isn't mentioned in this blessing. Why? The map tells us why. Look how this right here is Simeon. What is Simeon completely surrounded by? Judah. Ultimately, Simeon is absorbed by Judah because of the choices that Simeon makes. Kind of the way that Fremont wraps around Newark, right? Eventually, Fremont's taken over, all right? But the idea of it is that you have Simeon, who, by the way, never gets mentioned in the blessing because they're not there to be blessed. Of Benjamin, he said, the beloved of the Lord dwells in safety. The high God surrounds him all day long and dwells between his shoulders. We have a perfect example. We have a father holding a little baby girl here in the corner. And where is he holding her? Between his shoulders. The safest place, by the way, on the earth is between the shoulders of a mother or a father. And so what you have here is it says, Benjamin, beloved of the Lord, dwells in safety. How do we know that? Look at the map. This is where Benjamin is. Benjamin is within Judah and surrounded by Judah. And by the way, Judah always protects Benjamin. Benjamin and Judah become Judea, and they are the ones, by the way, that are going to be standing against the other 10 tribes. But by their location, they are truly between the shoulders of Judah. And of Joseph, he said, blessed by the Lord be his land, with the choicest gifts of heaven above and of the deep that crouches beneath, with the choicest fruits of the sun and the rich yield of the months, with the finest produce of the ancient mountains and the abundance of the everlasting hills. Let me explain to you. He is saying that, but the blessing of Joseph is going to have everything from the ocean to the mountains, to the rivers, to the lakes, to everything. Because of the blessing of Joseph, their people get to experience all the blessings. For example, Asher gets to experience the blessings of the sea. Gad gets to experience the blessings of the river and of the land. But Manasseh gets to experience it all. Why? With the best gifts of the earth and its fullness of the favor of him who dwells in the bush, may the rest of the may the rest of the head of Joseph on the pate of him who is prince among his brothers. A firstborn bull. He has majesty, and his horns are the horns of a wild ox. With him he shall gore the peoples, all of them, to the ends of the earth. They are 10,000 of Ephraim, and they are thousands of Manasseh. So here's what you need to understand. There's this full blessings. They get to experience everything from the sea to the desert to the river to the lakes. This is Manasseh's portion. This is Manasseh's portion, and this is Ephraim's. Sorry, this is. I want to show you this. I messed up. This is Ephraim's portion. Notice they have everything from the sea to the river to the desert and around. The descendants of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, have all the blessings that Israel has to offer. Why? Joseph, the chosen one, who said, by the way, that his brothers would bow down before him. By the way, Ephraim, when Jacob blesses, the oldest would have been Manasseh on his right, Ephraim on his left. When Joseph brings his two sons together, Jacob switches hand and blesses Ephraim. Ephraim, by the way, northern kingdom of Israel, Ephraim is their poster child. And of Zebulun, he said, rejoice, Zebulun, in your going out, Issachar in your tents. Zebulun in your going out, the fact that they were able to go and take produce. And Issachar in their tents, the fact that they were able to bring it home. They shall call peoples to their mountains. There they offer right sacrifices, for they draw from the abundance of the seas and of the hidden treasures of the sands. Here's what you have. Right here, that is Zebulun. And next to it is Issachar, which means between these two lands, you have access to the seas, the Sea of Galilee, and you also have access to that which is in the sand. And of Gad, he said, blessed be who enlarges Gad. Listen to that again. Blessed be he who enlarges Gad. You know where Gad is today? Jordan. Modern day Jordan is Gad. Blessed is he that enlarges Gad. Watch this. Blessed he who enlarges Gad. Gad crouches like a lion. He tears off arm and scalp. Woohoo! He chose the best of the land for himself. Here's what's amazing. I love this story. When they're coming up into the eastern part of the land, God goes, I want you to take the western part. Gad goes, this looks pretty good. This whole land that's that's east of the Jordan looks pretty good. I'll make a deal with you. I will become your fighting force. I will send my men with the people of Israel and fight for them if Moses, you will give me this stretch of land. And they make the deal. And Gad chose the best land. Does that make sense? If you're going to make a deal, make it good for yourself. And with that, Gad sent in his fighting men. They fought for them, came back, and had this land. Look at this. He chose the best of the land for himself, for there is a commander's portion. Why would he get a commander's portion? Because he ran the army that fought for Israel in the promised land. Was reserved. And he came with the heads of the people. With Israel, he executed the justice of the Lord and his judgments for Israel. This is Gad's land. It is everything connected to the Jordan. By the way, Reuben gets this little piece of land at the bottom. Manasseh gets all this place that, by the way, is called the Golan Heights. I've been there. There ain't that much to look at. But that space between the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea, beautiful land. Gad was no dummy, and he made a deal. And Moses blesses him because of his willingness to be the fighting force that would fight for their brothers. And Dan, he said, Dan is a lion's cub that leaps from Bashan. Now, I want to show you the land that Dan should have gotten. There it is. See it? If you will look on your map, I don't know if it's the detail is that good, but down just to that circle, if you look down, that area right now is called the Gaza Strip. That's where the Philistines came from. And by the way, Dan never defeated the Philistines. So Dan, let's go back in our little thing, Dan took his entire clan and leaped up north. So when it says, and Dan, he said, Dan is a lion's cub that leaps from Bashan. Where do they leap to? Right here. And in doing so, Dan becomes this place in the north because, by the way, they got as far away from the Philistines as they could. So when it says he leaps from Bashan, he leaps because he left. And of Naphtali. He said, "Oh, Naphtali, seated with favor, full of the blessings of the Lord, possess the lake and the south." This is Naphtali. By the way, Naphtali surrounds the Sea of Galilee. This is where Capernaum, this is where all these things take place. When we were on our trip, they said 60% of the New Testament is written on the shores of the Sea of Galilee in the land of Naphtali. And you need to understand that in this is this beautiful land. It truly is gorgeous. And Naphtali gets this amazing land. And of Asher, he said, most blessed of sons be Asher. Let him be the favorite of his brothers, and let him dip his foot in oil. Your bars shall be iron and bronze, and as your days you shall be so shall your strength be. This is Asher. Asher makes all of its money being the port city, and all the money that came into Israel came through Asher. Verse 26. He has given all the blessings to the clans. And he says this, there is none like God. O Jeshurun, again, the pet name for Israel, who rides through the heavens to your help, through the skies in his majesties. The eternal God is your dwelling place, and underneath are the everlasting arms. You guys like that song, Everlasting Arms? And he thrust out the enemy before you and said, destroy. So Israel lived in safety. Jacob lived alone in a land of grain and wine, whose heavens drop down dew. Happy are you, O Israel, who is like you, a people saved by the Lord, the shield of your help and the sword of your triumph. Your enemies shall come fawning to you, and you shall tread upon their backs. Moses says these words, walks up the mountain, sees Canaan, and dies. Okay? I've taken you through this whole book of Deuteronomy and said to you, we're no longer clans anymore. Those blessings don't apply to us. What do we care what happens in Gad or in Asher? What do we care what happens in Naphtali or goes down and all the way into the areas of Judah? What do we care? Well, we should care about our history because we learn a lot about ourselves by looking at the people of Israel. But I want to say something to you. The problem with the blessings of Moses is they were flawed. And I'll tell you why. Moses told the people to go possess land. And then said to them, I won't go with you. And Moses went up on a mountain and died. You see, Moses was getting his last words in before he went up on his mountain and died. So I want to take you to a story where Jesus Christ is on a mountain praying for his followers before he dies. John 17, 12 through 19. While I was with them, this is Jesus speaking about his disciples. While I was with them, I kept them in your name, which you have given me. I have guarded them, and not one of them has been lost except the son of destruction. Judas was given away by God for his purpose, that the scripture might be fulfilled. But now I'm coming to you, and these things I speak in the world, that they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves. We're going again. But now I'm coming to you, and these things I speak in the world, that they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. And for their sake, I consecrate myself, that they also may be sanctified by truth. Notice what it says. As you sent me into the world, I send them into the world. God did not send the disciples into a land to possess it. He sent it into a world to change it. God did not send the disciples into this place where they were going to sit around and have crops, and they were going to have all these herds and flocks. He sent them into a world, but by the way, would hate them. Every one of them would die a martyr's death. You sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. And for their sake, I consecrate myself, that they also may be sanctified in the truth. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority and on heaven and earth has been given to me. Now we're in Matthew chapter 28. Why did I switch that? Because he prays for them and then finds them sleeping. You guys remember that? Can you imagine? He's just pleading on their behalf. They're good guys. Be good to them. Awesome. And comes down and they're all laying around sleeping. He's like, oh, right? But after his crucifixion and resurrection, he says these, And Jesus came to them and said, all authority on heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We are not sent to a land. We are sent to the world. We're not sent to a place to sit and to put our crop out there and see what happens. We are sent to change the lives of those people who are dying because of their sinful nature. And watch this. Teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you, and behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. Did you catch it? Moses said his blessings, went up on a hill, and died. Jesus gave his blessings to his disciples, went up on a hill and died, and yet rose again and says, I am with you always. Jesus doesn't leave us alone. He sends to us the Comforter. He sends to us the Counselor. And in doing so, he says, it's not about stuff. It's not about possessions. It's about lives. It's about people that you can go and make disciples and tell them the things that I have taught you. And in doing so, what happens is we get a completely different message than what was given to Moses. Moses' message was broken from the beginning because Moses' message had to do with law. And the fact is, just like you and I, they were going to break that law. Jesus' message is a message of grace. And Jesus' message says, I'm with you always. What we have is two men facing their death. One trying one last time to bless these people in the hopes that they will not screw up. The other one facing his death, fully aware that we're all screw-ups, and giving us our only hope, which is him. Jesus, as Hebrews says, is the better Moses. Jesus is the one that gives us life. So why do we look at the story of Deuteronomy? To see what it would be like if you and I were left with just the law. But we're not left with just the law. We have grace, and we have mercy, and we have his sustenance through his Son. Amen? I thought this would be fun. Last service didn't. Well, I finally got this up for them. I thought it'd be fun for you to see all the places that our tour group went in this whole map that I've been showing you. This is it. The only lands that we weren't able, the clan lands we weren't able to go into was Asher, Reuben, and Gad. We went through all the rest of them. Simeon obviously is already gone. But we went through all these lands. That trek, we started in Tel Aviv, which right there is that Joppa next to the ocean. And we went up to Caesarea, and from there we went to Nazareth, from there to Megiddo. And from there we went all the way up to Caesarea Philippi and Dan. And then we came down and to Capernaum, and we came around the sea, and then we crossed the sea, and then we came down the Jordan River, and we stopped at Bethshan, and we stopped at Gilgal, and we went all the way to the bottom of the Dead Sea, and we saw where the Dead Sea Scrolls were, and we came up into Jerusalem and spent 3 days in Jerusalem, city of David, the Temple Mount, and then we ended our way back into Tel Aviv. The reason why I show you this is in our little 8 days, we covered almost the entire country. Do you get how small this is? And yet it's promised and cherished. I want you to understand that we have come to this book of Deuteronomy to learn its stories, so as we talked about last week, we may choose differently today. Amen? Let's pray. Father, I thank you. I thank you for your word. I thank you how it comes to life for us, Father, when we put our eyes into it and see it through your eyes. Father, I ask that you would be with us today, that you would be with our church, protection of our church, Father, a heart for where you have us going and what you have us moving to. Father, I would ask that you would, Father, help us to move forward in you. Father, I would ask that you would allow us to understand that you're not giving us land to possess. You are giving us a God that is with us. You're not giving us a land to possess. You're giving us a God that says, I'm with you always. And give us the strength to move forward. I thank you and I love you for who you are and what you do in our lives. And may you do so now. In Jesus' name, amen. As always, the regular attenders know that our communion and our offering is up front. For those